Welcome to the Morning Smiles podcast. In these episodes, we discuss with other business professionals about the world of making conscious decisions, especially in social settings like conferences and work events. Morning Smiles isn't just a podcast. It's a movement from the visionaries behind Sober Life Rocks. Join us for stories and discussions that celebrate conscious living and, most importantly, keeping you smiling. Whether you're on your commute to or from work or just seeking some inspiration, we're here to make sure that you have a bright part of your day. So stay positive and remember, making the right choices today means smiling tomorrow. We are on this journey together with Morning Smiles.
Good morning. I'm Margy Schaller, co-founder of Sober Life Rocks. I want to welcome you today and let you know that you are not alone. How many of you have been in those situations where the alcohol-forward events at conferences or business parties have left you feeling isolated? I know I have. But through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We are here to create a community where individuals like you who choose not to drink or drink less can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice. So let's get this conversation started. I'm here to introduce you to a dear friend of mine, Allison Lacoursiere, who is the CEO of Clear Coaching and a speaker and involved with so many other things and an influencer. And I can't wait for you to get to know her like I do. And I also have my other co-founder, Laura Nelson, here. So welcome, ladies.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited for today.
And I'm just popping on for the fun. I just love the conversation. So you know you're a special guest if I've joined in. Good to have you, Allison.
I feel very special. It's so good to be here.
Well, Allison, so many people look up to you and follow you on all the things. Can you just share a little bit about you, who you are, what you're involved with, all that?
Yes, absolutely. So I was born into dentistry. Basically, I was a dental assistant at the very beginning, and I grew into being a treatment coordinator, office manager, professional coach, and found myself into the world of entrepreneurship in 2020. And since then, it's been an incredible journey of speaking on some incredible stages, meeting amazing people, and ultimately, I have found and landed where I love to live the most is really empowering people to live their best, highest life potential. And I do that in a number of ways. One of them is through supporting companies, organizations, individuals, speakers around social media marketing and how to get themselves onto the platform in an authentic way. I teach women in leadership and business on how to really grow a company or themselves from a foundation of self-worth. And then I'm the co-founder of DentalFlix, a education in dentistry software that really empowers team members and dentists all over the world to grow their business and practice.
You know, I actually hired you about 7 months ago to do some confidence coaching. And I'm sure other people out there can relate. Like, yeah, I have this public persona and yeah, I have 2 businesses now. Yeah, I'm a speaker and I've published some books, but inside I struggle some days. And a lot of it, I think, is the boo voice in my head. Can you share a little bit about kind of how
did you say boo voice?
Yeah.
What's a boo voice?
Voice that no matter what I think I should be doing, it tells me, no, you're not good enough. No, you shouldn't. No, you're bothering people. No, you're doing it wrong.
Side note, I saw Allison speak recently, and she talked about that being a gremlin on our shoulder, right? So, okay, I'm caught up. So go ahead. Yes. Can you speak to that, Allison?
Yes, I love it. And it's almost like a monster inside of our own heads. And since I was very little, have just been very interested in how do we grow and thrive and not let anything externally or internally stop us from ultimately just being the person we want to be. And that's something that I see so often, especially for people that are public facing speakers, getting on stages. It's not an easy thing to do. And so we especially kind of have to combat that internal voice inside of ourselves that's saying like, what do you think people are going to learn from you? Like, who do you think you are getting on these stages? It's very natural. And there's a reason why our brain kind of brings that forward. And ultimately it's to keep us safe. But we need to catch up to what's actually happening in the world and in our life right now. And we don't need those voices to keep us safe anymore. And so there's a lot of neuroscience in this work. there's a lot of kind of repetition habits, really deciding who you want to become and the life that you want to live internally, like feeling good and excited and positive and peaceful in your own body. But it's really possible to get rid of that boo voice or that gremlin. And life gets to be extremely calm and joyful when it's not there as often. And so you're definitely not alone, Margie. And, Laura got to experience something pretty, when I went through, it was pretty earth shattering, where we got to see actually what everyone's boo voice was, what that not enough statement was. And the really interesting thing about that, and the thing that really pulls us all together and connects us, is we all have it. We all
Yeah.
have it. We just have to learn how to navigate it, deal with it, give ourselves a different language to share with ourselves and become repetitive around it. And then it becomes your new normal.
Okay. So
I was going to say, I'm doing a lot of certification around sobriety and learning about that. And that's probably the hardest part that you just talked about, was that when you do put down the alcohol, or when you're trying to navigate life with that alcohol, that boo voice is still there. And so you can learn how to stop drinking, but you got to learn how to handle that. So that was a really good, it's true. We all have it. We just hide it.
yeah. And so that's kind of where I wanted to bring the conversation next was as somebody who has navigated for the past 19 years sober in my own professional life and not mentioned it to more than 3 or 4 people, it was my boo voice telling me I was going to be judged. So what I would love to do before we dive into the solution to that, though, is talk about your journey with alcohol, both sort of what was it in your life growing up, and then what are some decisions you've made about it up till now, and then what happened last fall.
Absolutely. So I grew up in a household where my dad, prior to me being born, is an alcoholic. And so we had a lot of education going around in my household, and just a lot of, I don't want to say fear, but kind of fear of like, you have to be careful. Alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful. And just all of these things that he would share with us as we were growing up. And we would just kind of have it in the back of our minds. And as I started to get older, I would drink and have cocktails and things with my friends. But I think I started noticing for the first time that my relationship with alcohol had changed in like not a positive way when I went through something really hard and traumatic in my personal life with a partner, and I went through domestic violence. And on the other side of that, I didn't really notice what I was doing, but like, we could always look back to look forward, and you're like, oh wow, that wasn't healthy and that was not good. But I used alcohol as like a coping mechanism to kind of just not feel the pain that I was feeling.
Yeah.
And I really did, like, as kind of a professional woman who had to like carry on with her life, really just button myself up and started using alcohol, I think, as a way to numb the way that I was feeling. And I didn't really allow myself to fully settle into it. And so I had that, like, I recognized a little while, I was like, you know what, having 5 o'clock wine every night just like probably isn't the best thing for me. So I stopped that, but I still noticed at events and at things, there was like this subconscious decision to just drink. And
Mhm.
when I was like stressed or when I was just bored or lonely, I would just like, wine time. And I
Yeah.
never really thought of it as anything like negative, but I had this realization last year. I was feeling the wear and tear of being on the road a lot. I was feeling quite lonely. And I remember like sitting there by myself alone, and I was like, maybe I should go get some wine. And I was like, no, like maybe not actually. Why? Like I'm here by myself, and like clearly I'm uncomfortable. And my first response was to go get something to make me less comfortable. So I started getting really curious about that. And around that time, I had met Laura. And Laura, she told everyone, like, yeah, I don't drink anymore. And I got really curious about that. So I started asking her questions. I was like, what is it like? Like, tell me more. And I just felt like I had this kind of advocate in the safe space to just explore what my relationship with alcohol was like. And I think because my dad had always kind of like put this like fear in us that like you can't like abuse this substance, I felt a bit of shame, honestly, even talking about the fact that I'm like, I don't think I'm using it really appropriately right now.
Yeah.
So I went to a conference in October, And I just decided, Laura was there, you were there, and I just decided I'm not going to have any alcohol at this event. I'm curious. I just want to see what it's like. I'm going to just release it for a while.
We'll
And
experiment.
exactly, like just try it out. What does it feel like? Every single dental conference I have ever been to, I've had at least one glass of wine every night. And I was like, maybe I should just try not to. And it was a fantastic experience. I woke up every morning, did yoga, felt great. I just was able to have more clear conversations with people. I felt more connected to myself and those around me. And I just walked away actually very transformed from that experience and went on for the next 2 months, not drinking absolutely anything. And I felt great. And now I'm like, when I go on a special occasion or like we have some champagne on certain events, I'll have a glass. But for the most part, I'm just so much more aware of when I'm like, I feel bored or sad or icky. I'm like, no, that's not the time to go and get a glass of wine, actually. And so I'm kind of like evolved from that experience in a really powerful way. And I can't stop talking about it, actually. I've been talking about it to everybody.
Which is our
I
ultimate goal, right? Is to
Yeah.
normalize the conversation. That's all we want. Because when somebody else, you don't feel like you're alone, you're a little bit more willing to ask the questions and consider that. So that's awesome.
and I'm just so super impressed at, a younger person who has that sort of self-awareness to look at that relationship with alcohol, look at the why are you drinking, look at the when and how much are you drinking. It's not that your life had come to a crashing halt because of alcohol, but it wasn't your best life
Mhm.
because of alcohol.
Exactly. And I think I just don't believe that anything we're doing subconsciously to numb ourselves it's just not the best thing to do. And I was doing that and I just didn't realize it until I took a break and recognized like this has to be for me a conscious decision and a celebration or not. And so now, like, my kind of like litmus test of like, will I drink or not is like, is this like a joyful experience for me that I want to consciously participate in rather than it's 5 o'clock, I'm feeling stressed. I don't want to go to sleep. I feel lonely and I'm going to have a glass of wine. And I think that for me just has been so powerful.
Okay, but that brings up then the boo voice.
Mm-hmm.
So you've taken away your coping mechanism, which means that you're left feeling stressed or exhausted or upset. And now what? What are you doing? What are you doing with all that?
Well, I think, I mean, I know both of you know that we can think that numbing that boo voice is going to be like, this is going to like fix it. But we all know it absolutely doesn't. Like, it does not. So when you get rid of that like fake solution, because all that solution does is just make it worse and make you feel worse about yourself and just like prolong whatever it is that you're trying to actually identify inside of you, it gives you space to actually solve for whatever it is that's making you uncomfortable. And so once I got through the like kind of habitual want or desire and I got conscious around it, there are so many things you can do to combat the boo voice that actually make a difference and actually help you connect to yourself in a deeper way. And so during the time when I wasn't drinking at all, I did yoga every single day and I did breath work and I found different solutions. If I'm like, I want to like experiment with something to drink, I was looking for kombuchas, I was looking for tea, like just fun things that also kind of gave you that like interesting thing to do in the evenings. But ultimately, I sat with myself and I'm like, Allison, what is this? Like, why are you uncomfortable right now? What is that boo voice saying to you? And it gave me actually the ability from like a coach perspective, which I do this to myself all the time, but I got to do it in a very deeper and more real way because I could hear what I was saying and thinking to myself even better because I wasn't numbing it. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's also not true. So what's a different thought that you can have? And I was able to kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy myself because I was conscious and I wasn't just zoned out and numb and just moving on in this kind of um yeah, I would just say like unconscious way.
I've actually, we're friends, of course, outside of this, and I've sort of watched and observed since then too for you. And I know that there were some of the thoughts you had around loneliness and hotels and wine. And I've also seen you pivot this year saying, maybe I don't need to be traveling as much as I do. Maybe I can build, because those voices that you weren't numbing, it sounds like you were listening to, and you're making conscious decisions now for your life that you might not have had you numbed them and just pushed them away.
Oh my gosh, 100%. I think for anybody in anything or any aspect of their life, the most important skill that we can create is to know ourselves, to hear ourselves, the truest part of ourselves. The boo voice isn't the real you. The real you is the one that is like, I'm dreaming of this. I'm excited for this. Like, I'm capable of this. That's the real voice that you have. And that's the real voice that tells you what you want with your life. But exactly like you said, Laura, when we're on this like rat race of just like being chaotically busy and then numbing with alcohol and then being chaotically busy again, we actually don't get the time to be like, wait a second, who am I? What do I want to be doing with my life? Who are you? Like, what do you want? And when you can have that, that's the first step in being able to step towards the things that you want changed or different in your life.
Okay, so being the practical one in the group, I want to give each of you guys a scenario that I think everybody can relate to, and walk me through not only what you think in your head, but also some of the things that you might say to people in this scenario. So you're with a bunch of people in a work situation, whether it's at a office or wherever you might be, and something really crappy happens. The boss yells at all of you, or you hear that there might be layoffs, or just something really stressful. And as a group, you say, you know what, let's get out of here. Let's all go to happy hour and like drink this off. Right? Common thing that people would do. So if you're not drinking, how do you handle that invitation? If you decide to go with a group, how do you handle that? What do you do with the feelings of the crappy day while everybody else is drinking it off? Like, how does this play in real life? Laura, do you want to start first?
Oh, well, okay. Well, a lot of it it's not going to go away, right? And I think that sometimes we are afraid to be the first to go first. But for me, I'm kind of not that kind of a person. So I would probably lean more towards we probably should talk about things, like address it or get through it or handle it before we start drinking. I'm all for having fun. I'm all for relaxing. One of my biggest things was I thought when I stopped drinking, I had to stop having fun. And that's not the case. However, I don't want to get into a scenario where the longer we drink, the more we're making irrational decisions, saying irrational things, doing. So I want to handle the issue, then go have fun or whatever. And then I can make my exit plan when it's time to go. So I think it's a matter for me would be, I would want to address it, not stop the whatever they need to release, and then have my exit plan to get out. That would be mine. And that's a hard scenario too, that you just gave us, just so you know. You didn't even start with an easy one.
But it's a real life deal.
It's real life, yeah.
And Allison says things like, well, just manage your emotions and like, just combat that boo voice. Well, okay, thanks, Allison. I appreciate the highfalutin ideas, but let's get practical. Like, what does it really look like? So how about, can you step us through what that would really, like, what is the dialogue in your head during that? And how do you say to your friends that you're going to go or not go? And if you're not drinking, what do you say? Like, help me out here.
Yeah. So similar to Laura, like I'm not the type of person that just kind of like goes with the crowd. I'm very comfortable being like, that's not for me. So how I would feel about this is if I had relationships with my team members and I knew that we were going to go and actually have a good discussion, like it wasn't just about like let's go get ripped up and like shots all night, like I would definitely not go to that, like never. But if I knew we were going to go and actually have some like intelligent conversation and talk through the issues and the fears and all of the things that happen when bad news is dropped on us, and alcohol was just kind of like a byproduct. It was just there and it wasn't the main event. Then I would go and I would say, I'm not drinking. That's what I've been saying lately. I don't drink, because it's not like you're saying I'm not drinking right now. Cause then people are like, wait a second, why not? You just like, I don't drink. And then there's less questions. That's what I found. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but that's what I've been saying. So yeah, I would do that. And then similar to Laura, I would know when I want to leave. Like vibe and energy really matters to me. And I don't want to sit around a group of people just complaining, because I would get into solution thinking right away. I'd be like, okay, what's the next step for us? What are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? What are the possible like roads we can take? If that was the conversation and it stayed there, I'd be happy. If not, I'd be out of there.
Now, see, you guys, this is why I love having these two women on as guests. Don't sit in the problem because it's just as ickier.
I'm going to be the first one out looking for a new job while they're hungover in the morning, and I'm networking. I'm moving on. If this boss is that bad, I'm out of there.
I'd be starting a new company. I'd be like, all right,
I know,
guys,
right? Yeah.
Let's go start a new company now.
There we go.
I love that. So, Allison, you dropped something in there that I wanted to pick up on. You said that you're now just saying, I don't drink. But people who've known you for all these years have experienced you as somebody who did drink. So what kind of reaction are you getting from people who know that?
And I want to add to this because I want to add a point, because you do drink. You are, but you're saying you don't drink. And so I'm bringing this up because there are some people like myself who I don't drink and I prefer not to drink. And I honestly say I can't drink. But I get all worried about what people think. You actually drink, but just say I don't drink. So how is that? Yeah.
For people that are close to me, like people that are like I am hanging out with all the time, I don't say that. If it's somebody new or they're like, can I buy you a drink? Or let's get some drinks. That's what I say. I don't drink because I don't want to talk to them about it if it's somebody like new. But like for my family or for, people like if I was hanging out with Laura or my good girlfriends, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not right now. I'm focusing on my health and well-being. Like I would actually talk about it. But for people that are new that I don't know or just, acquaintances, I'm just like, nope, I just don't.
And putting that in comparison to, let me just compare it. Like, cause I always say the closest thing for me is if somebody says they're vegan or vegetarian. If somebody says, do you want steak? They don't say, well, let me tell you all the reasons why I don't eat meat, because they just say, no, I don't eat meat. And it's okay, usually. Right. But that's the same with us. Like, I just don't drink. You don't have to have, everybody has their own comfort zone, but you don't have to tell them why or what. Just, I don't drink. I love it. And just be confident with it.
And but have you conversation
with that statement? Have you had anybody say anything one or the other?
Not with like the acquaintances that I've said that to. No.
Nice.
Because it's just like the conversation just moves on to something else. And I like that. I'm like, yep, this is just a thing. Like, it's not, we don't need to like dive deep into this. You don't need to ask me if I'm pregnant. You don't need to like, ask me all these things. Like, it's just this, and let's move on.
I would just like to point out right now that Margy, nobody asks you and I anymore if we're pregnant when we don't drink. So there's an age thing there, I think. That's a question I don't get asked anymore when I don't drink.
Thanks for that, Laura.
Yeah. Just pointing out that question doesn't arise for me.
Okay. So what about the people who do know you and you have said, I'm not drinking right now for health reasons or whatever the things are you say? What has that reaction been like?
I have to tell you like a really funny reaction because my brother is just like, he's just kind of a smart ass. If I'm allowed to say that on the podcast.
Of course.
I told him, I was like, you know what? I've just replaced alcohol with yoga. And he's like, so when you go to the bar, you just tell them you're going to do some downward facing dog instead of ask for a beer. And I was like, basically, yes.
I love that. That's hysterical.
But it's honestly been a very cool conversation, actually, for the people that are close to me in my life. I have not had any negative responses. A lot of people are just like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, I think more and more people are really questioning their relationship with alcohol. More and more people are questioning whether like alcohol is healthy because like everyone's really kind of more health conscious and really questioning like, is this something I want to do? So I don't know. I've had some really interesting conversations around it. It usually sparks like inspiration for others to be like, I should try that maybe. Or how long have you been doing it? How do you feel? Like just questions like that. Or people have said like, you know what, I should really cut back too. So everything that I've experienced so far has been positive. And also the cool thing too is like the options to not drink are getting more and more. So like I can go and have like mocktails with my friends and not feel like I'm left out.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that people are reacting positively. I got sober 19 years ago and that was not the case back then. Then it was this huge stigma around it. And so I've carried that shame stigma with me, and times are changing. And that's why Laura and I are so passionate, because we really shouldn't be having those conversations like, why would you have a conversation about somebody who's lactose intolerant? Like, I'm alcohol intolerant, right? So
Yeah.
we just don't need to have that. But it's such a shift in the way that we think and the way that we behave. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you too is, have you noticed anything different in networking events, whether they're professional or even social, how you navigate those without a drink in your hand that contains alcohol?
Yes. Interesting, very interesting things that I did not expect. One of them is I just notice the smell of alcohol so strongly when I'm at networking events and I'm not drinking, which is not, I was like, whoa, this is what it smells like. But when you're drinking, you don't actually notice it, which is crazy.
Mhm.
Um, I also just have like an absolute intolerance to spend time with people that I can tell are just quite tipsy or drunk because I'm like, we're not going to have a deep, meaningful conversation here. So I just kind of navigate like away from those people. Um, I tend to hydrate a lot. Like I drink a lot of water and then I feel really good the next day. But outside of that, like I think for me, I've never used alcohol as like a way to feel confident. Um, it's more just the thing for me was it's more just like kind of having something in your hand or like it's kind of the thing to do. And so when I just decided it wasn't the thing to do, I would have something different in my hand and do the same thing. So I actually found I like myself more when I'm in those rooms without alcohol. It's I would say like a deeper connection I'm experiencing probably with myself first and then others. Um and I just kind of like skirt around anybody that I feel won't remember a conversation with me the next day.
That's amazing. I think that going to those events and avoiding those people is one thing, but then like we're there to actually make connections. That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
And Laura and I have been talking about this a lot. Like, if we can't do that, then what are we doing?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one of the things that at Sober Life Rocks that we're really trying to look into addressing is how can you make networking more meaningful at after our events without, judging what's in somebody's cup, but at the same time still making that be something significant. And it's a challenge.
Yeah, and I will say honestly, like having Laura there with me at the first networking event that I ever went to and decided I didn't want to drink helped me so much because I don't know, like it's just you kind of feel like you're alone if you're making that decision not to. Like you guys said, like you guys have been alone in so many of these things. But like having Laura there with me and you there, it was just like, yeah, this is just what we're doing. Like it's not I'm not here like alone, outcast, like the only one that's not part of the cool club. Like I'm just making a decision and I am so happy that I have people that are also just supportive of that. And, we're having conversations together and everything's normal. So I think it like you kind of build it up in your head a little bit more than what it needs to be, but having people that you also know are there and are just choosing not to partake is extremely helpful. So that's why I love so much what you guys are doing because it was like the first time in my life I was like, oh, I have permission to make a different choice, which I always had, but you guys just made it so much easier for me to be like, and I actually really like this choice and I don't feel like there's something wrong with me because I'm not doing it.
I'm going to add
That
to that night though, too. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there's a two-prong effect to this. First, it's making people not feel alone, right? Like
Mhm.
you, like there was 20 of us there that we realized after the fact we were all sober. We're like, whoa, we always felt like we were all alone. But the other thing too is at the event we went to, they only had wine and water. And
Yeah.
it's like now it's time to also talk to the meetings, which is what we're after. Of like, we need better options because if there were better options, you might feel more like choosing another option than just water, right? Which is good. I'm
Yeah.
glad you like water, but I like to have something fun in my glass. What else do you have? That's a big
Yeah.
change.
100%. I actually last night went to this like spa event with one of my girlfriends and we got there and it's like a plunge pool. So you go from like hot to cold and it's meant to be very good for you, very healthy. And we looked at the menu and we were like, oh, let's get like an elixir, like a tonic, like something that's like healthy, a healthy drink. But the only thing that was on the menu was alcohol. And I remember the guy came over to us and we both were just like staring at the menu, like wishing that there was something different on the menu because we're like, we're in a healthy environment and like being healthy for our bodies I don't want to drink alcohol here, but other people were, which is fine. But like to your point, if there was something else on the menu, we would have taken it immediately. Like, give me like the ginger turmeric, like delicious thing that's going to make me even healthier. Like, that's what is
Yes.
exciting.
What I liked about that night too was that we were sitting at one point with a table of like 6 or 7 people, and I think 4 of us weren't drinking and the other 3 were drinking. So it's not like we're creating this, separate clique of people sitting around judging drinkers. No. But what it did mean though is that the core of the conversation was more meaningful. And the people who maybe were a little bit more inebriated, they pitched in, but we knew that that piece of the conversation was something we might have to redo again tomorrow.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something like a little bit bold.
Please
Because
do.
You're just going to go out there and say it. Do it.
just going to say it. I will say for anybody that is like offended by like discussions around sobriety and like the excitement around sobriety, if you are personally and you're listening to this and you're like, I don't need to do this. Like, I don't even need to like come in. If you're listening to this, you're probably not that person. But for anybody that has that response to this conversation or that has some kind of like negative feeling around the discussion about sobriety, you probably have to just do some soul searching there. Because like it really is like anybody that is really like, I don't need to give up my wine. Like and you're defending it because you're feeling maybe judged. It's really only a self-judgment. That's it. So
I'm going to flip it around because you said something earlier that Margy and I have seen on the other side of this that I think is important to address. For those of you that are sober, for those of you that are sober and people offer you a drink and then they say, do you want something to do? We sometimes sober people think like they're pushing alcohol on me or there's a peer pressure. And so on the flip side, you have no problem saying to somebody, I don't drink and have had no problems. So we also need to do some soul searching on the sober side to say it is a societal thing. And someone's like, do you want ice cream? No, I don't want any ice cream. Are you sure? Ice cream's good. We don't get offended because someone's pushing ice cream on us. So just also on the other side, like, it's not, Margy, you already said that it's not about 2 separate groups. It's about the same group coming together and not worrying about what you have in your drink and not being offended by what's in your cup or not in your cup.
exactly. And I think it's like, so my mom and I, like, we have wine time and it's so lovely. And we sit and we talk and we have this great time. So when my mom offers me wine after I tell her, like, I'm not drinking right now, or I'm not drinking recently, or I don't want to drink, I'm not offended because I know what her desire is. Her desire is to connect with me in the way that we've always connected. And the opportunity here is to figure out different ways to connect. And so I'm not upset with her. I'm just like recognizing like, oh, she wants to connect with me. She wants to have this like moment with me. But let's create this moment in a different way.
Exactly.
Well, that sounds like a mic drop moment to me. Before we end, I do have some rapid fire questions that are fun that I'd just love to ask you, but I did want to give either you or Laura a chance if there's anything else that you wanted to share in this moment.
I'm just really grateful for both of you to open this conversation up and to share your stories and be vulnerable to allow others to do the exact same thing.
I love it. I love it. And I just love, Allison, that you are on here because you're just an example of one thing we've learned in the years when Margy became sober and then me coming into this sobriety side of things, that we used to believe you have a problem or you don't. And that's not the case. We've learned alcoholism and alcohol use disorder, it's a spectrum. And for you to be able to question and soul search and get comfortable with your relationship with alcohol just means that what we're doing and what Margy did 19 years before us is making a difference. And so we're so glad that you're part of our journey with us.
Thank you.
All right, rapid fire questions. What do you got, Margy?
All right, here we go. Allison, if you had a theme song that played every time you walked into a room, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Okay, there's a song and it like has like this one, I don't even know what the song is called, but it's like her face is the map of the world, it's the map of the world. And like I love that song because like I want my face to be the map of the world. Like
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. My grandmother, when I was a little girl, I would crawl up on her lap and I would trace the lines on her face. And my
oh,
parents were aghast and trying to get me to stop. And she said, no, she's just tracing the life that I've lived.
That's very
Aw.
beautiful.
And I
That's
just thought that was so
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
That's cool.
Okay. What's the weirdest food combination you've ever tried and surprisingly enjoyed?
Peanut butter and tuna sandwiches.
Ooh,
It's really
okay.
good. It's very good.
There you go.
I stand by it.
On a sandwich, like on bread,
Yeah.
is that a Canadian thing?
No, it's a Bermuda thing.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, it's not a Bermuda thing. It's just an Allison who went living in Bermuda thing.
All right. So stranded on a deserted island and you can only bring 3 things. What do you bring?
Something to collect water, something to keep me warm, and something to start a fire.
Oh my gosh, so practical. I thought you were going to come out with that gorgeous lipstick that you have on. Gotta have that.
It'll be still on, even if I'm just stuck on a deserted island, like for weeks and months. That's how good it is.
All right. Final thing. What is your spirit animal and why?
I think it's a butterfly because I have had a theme in my life where I have kind of gone into a cocoon and then come out like bigger, stronger, better, faster. And I think that's part of like the journey of life is just continuing to kind of like redefine yourself and like go inwards and then go outwards even bigger.
Awesome. I love that. Allison, if it's okay with you, we will put your contact information in the show notes because I just know that there are women and men, both teams, who could benefit so much from your confidence coaching and from the discussions that you're willing to have with people and be so authentic and be so vulnerable. So thank you so much for coming on our show. And Laura, such a gift to have you here.
Oh, I pop in here and there. So I'll be back on a future one. You do an amazing job without me. So I'm so glad I'm here this time.
Thank you. And until next time, make sure that you honor yourself, honor your truth, and wake up the next morning with morning smiles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Morning Smiles podcast. Remember, every decision you make today shapes the smiles of your tomorrows. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on social. No one needs to do this alone. Here's to making choices that brighten your world and your morning smiles.